Sarah Martinez never imagined her life would change forever while trapped in a military shower facility during a terrorist attack on the naval base in San Diego. What started as an ordinary Tuesday morning would reveal secrets that had been buried for years, transforming her from a confused civilian contractor into someone who would discover she held unprecedented authority over America's most elite fighting force. The morning began like any other at Naval Base Coronado. Sarah, a 34-year-old cybersecurity consultant, arrived early to finish installing new security protocols in the base's computer systems. She had been working on this classified project for 3 months, but today felt different. There was unusual activity around the base, with more personnel moving about than normal, and she noticed several black SUVs parked near the administration building that hadn't been there before. As she made her way to the shower facilities in Building 47 after a particularly grueling night shift, Sarah heard what sounded like distant thunder. But the sky was clear, and something about the sound made her stomach tighten with unease. The base alarm system suddenly erupted in a deafening wail that echoed across the entire facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and she could hear boots running on concrete floors above her. The shower area was located in the basement level of the building, designed for personnel who worked overnight shifts. Sarah had just stepped into one of the stalls when the lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in moments later, casting eerie red shadows on the white tile walls. Then, she heard something that made her blood run cold: gunfire, close and getting closer. Her military training from years ago kicked in immediately. Sarah had served 4 years in the Army as an intelligence analyst before transitioning to civilian life, but those instincts never truly disappeared. She quickly assessed her situation. The shower area had only one entrance, which could be both a blessing and a curse. If attackers came down here, she would be trapped, but if she could secure the area, it might also provide safety. She grabbed her clothes and dressed quickly, her hands shaking not from fear but from adrenaline. The gunfire was getting louder, and she could hear shouting in what sounded like a foreign language. Through the small ventilation grate near the ceiling, she caught fragments of radio chatter. The words "hostile breach" and "multiple casualties" sent chills down her spine. Sarah tried her cell phone, but there was no signal in the basement. The landline phone on the wall was dead. She was completely cut off from the outside world, with no way to know what was happening above or how long she might be trapped down here. The reality of her situation began to sink in. She was alone, unarmed, and potentially in the crosshairs of what appeared to be a coordinated attack on a United States naval facility. As minutes stretched into what felt like hours, Sarah heard new sounds: different boots, moving with purpose and discipline. These weren't the chaotic footsteps of attackers. These were the measured, tactical movements of trained soldiers. Hope flickered in her chest, but she remained hidden, unsure who might be coming down the stairs. The footsteps stopped at the entrance to the shower area. Sarah held her breath, pressing herself against the wall behind a row of lockers. A voice called out, clear and authoritative, "This area needs to be secured. Check every corner." The accent was American, the tone professional. These were friendly forces, but Sarah still hesitated to reveal herself. That's when she heard something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. One of the soldiers said, "Sir, we've got multiple hostiles down, but we're still missing Package Delta. Command says it's critical we locate Package Delta before extraction." Another voice responded, "Roger that. Package Delta was last tracked to this sector. Could be civilian personnel trapped down here." Sarah's mind raced. Package Delta, that was military terminology for a high-value asset or person. Someone important enough to delay an extraction during an active terrorist incident. But who could be that important on a naval base, and why would they be in this area? The soldiers entered the shower area systematically, their tactical lights cutting through the dim emergency lighting. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She stepped out from behind the lockers, hands visible and voice steady, "Don't shoot. I'm Sarah Martinez, civilian contractor, cybersecurity division." 3 men in full combat gear turned toward her, weapons lowered but ready. Their faces were painted with camouflage, and they wore the distinctive patches of Naval Special Warfare, Navy SEALs. The team leader, a tall man with piercing blue eyes, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez. we need to get you out of here immediately. The facility is under attack by an unknown terrorist group. But, then, something strange happened. Rodriguez looked at her more carefully, his expression changing from professional concern to confusion, then, to something that looked almost like recognition. He spoke into his radio with an urgency that seemed disproportionate to rescuing a single civilian contractor. "Control, this is Bravo Team. We've located Package Delta. I repeat, Package Delta is secure and ready for extraction." Sarah felt the world shift beneath her feet. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Package Delta? You're talking about me?" Chief Rodriguez exchanged glances with his teammates, and Sarah could see an entire conversation happening in their silent communication. Finally, he spoke. "Ma'am, with respect, we need to move now. Questions can be answered once we're in a secure location. But, yes, you are Package Delta, and you are the primary objective of this extraction mission." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. She wasn't just a random civilian caught in a terrorist attack. She was the target. Someone had specifically planned this assault with the knowledge that she would be here, in this building, at this time. Her cybersecurity work, her access to classified naval systems, her background in military intelligence, it all suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. As Chief Rodriguez led her toward the exit, Sarah's mind churned with questions and growing dread. Who knew about her presence here? How had terrorists gotten detailed intelligence about her movements? And, most terrifyingly, what made her important enough that Navy SEALs had been specifically tasked with her protection and extraction? The stairwell was littered with debris and showed clear signs of combat. Bullet holes scarred the walls, and Sarah could smell the acrid scent of gunpowder mixed with something else, smoke, possibly from explosive charges. The SEALs moved with fluid precision, one ahead, one behind, and Rodriguez beside her, their weapons scanning every angle as they climbed toward ground level. As they reached the main floor, Sarah could see the extent of the damage. Windows were blown out, and several fires burned throughout the building. The attack had been coordinated and devastating, designed not just to cause chaos but to target specific locations within the naval facility. Through a shattered window, she glimpsed other SEAL teams moving across the compound, engaged in what appeared to be a fierce firefight with well-armed attackers. Rodriguez pressed a radio earpiece and spoke in rapid, coded language that Sarah couldn't fully understand. But she caught enough to realize that the situation was far from over. The terrorists had not been fully neutralized, and extraction was going to be more complicated than simply walking to safety. That's when she overheard a conversation that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her own identity. Rodriguez was speaking to his team leader through the radio, unaware that Sarah was listening carefully. "Control, Package Delta is secure, but we've got a problem. Her biometric scan isn't matching what we have on file. Either our intelligence is wrong, or..." He paused, looking directly at Sarah with an expression she couldn't read. "Or Package Delta isn't who she thinks she is." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah stared at Chief Rodriguez, her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. "What do you mean I'm not who I think I am?" she whispered, but before he could answer, the sharp crack of sniper fire echoed from somewhere outside the building. Rodriguez immediately pushed Sarah behind a concrete pillar, his team flanking them with weapons raised. "Ma'am, we need to move to a secure location before we can discuss this further," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Right now, keeping you alive is the priority." But Sarah wasn't moving. The revelation that her very identity might be a lie had rooted her to the spot more effectively than fear ever could. "No," she said firmly, surprising herself with her own authority. "You don't get to drop a bomb like that and, then, tell me to wait for explanations. I need to know what you meant. Now." The chief looked conflicted, glancing between Sarah and his tactical radio, which was crackling with reports from other teams across the base. Finally, he made a decision that would prove to be pivotal. "Petty Officer Johnson, maintain overwatch. Ramirez, secure the perimeter. I need 2 minutes with Package Delta." Rodriguez turned to face Sarah fully, his combat-hardened features showing an emotion she hadn't expected: compassion. "Ma'am, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but I need you to trust me. According to our classified files, you're not just Sarah Martinez, civilian contractor. You're Commander Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, United States Navy, Special Operations Division. And, according to our records, you've been missing in action for the past 6 years. Sarah felt the world tilt on its axis. That's impossible, she breathed. I would remember being in the Navy. I served in the Army, but that was over a decade ago. I've been working in cybersecurity since then. I have a civilian life, an apartment, a job history. Memory suppression, Rodriguez said quietly. It's a classified procedure used in special operations when personnel are exposed to information so sensitive that their conscious knowledge of it becomes a national security threat. Ma'am, you weren't just any Navy officer. You were part of a Black Ops unit that specialized in cyber warfare and deep cover intelligence operations. The implications crashed over Sarah like a tsunami. If this was true, then, her entire adult life, her career, her relationships, even her sense of self, was essentially a constructed lie designed to hide her real identity. But, even as she struggled to process this information, part of her mind was already working on a different problem. If she really was this Commander Morrison, and if she had been involved in Black Ops cyber warfare, then, the attack on the naval base wasn't random terrorism. It was specifically designed to flush her out. Someone knows, she said suddenly, the pieces falling into place with terrifying clarity. Someone knows who I really am, and they orchestrated this entire attack to get to me. The question is, why now? What changed that made it worth mounting an assault on a United States naval facility just to capture one person? Rodriguez nodded grimly. That's exactly what we're trying to figure out. But, ma'am, there's something else you need to know. The memory suppression wasn't just about protecting classified information. According to our briefing, you volunteered for the procedure after something went wrong during your last mission. Something that involved the loss of your entire team. Sarah felt physically sick. The idea that she had voluntarily erased her own memories was almost harder to accept than the revelation about her military identity. What could have been so traumatic, so devastating, that she had chosen to forget her own life rather than live with the memories? Before she could ask more questions, Johnson's voice crackled over the radio. Chief, we've got movement on the eastern perimeter. Multiple hostiles, and they're heading this way. We need to move now. Rodriguez immediately switched back into tactical mode. Ma'am, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to get you to a secure location where we can continue this conversation safely. There's a lot more you need to know, and, right now, staying alive is the only way you're going to get those answers. As they prepared to move, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Chief, I need you to give me a weapon, she said calmly. If what you're telling me is true, if I really am a Navy commander with special operations training, then I'm not going to be carried to safety like helpless baggage. I'm going to fight. Rodriguez hesitated. Ma'am, with respect, even if your identity is what we believe it to be, you've had no access to those memories or that training for 6 years. It would be dangerous to assume. Give me the weapon, Sarah interrupted, and there was something in her voice that hadn't been there before, an authority that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her, from a part of her personality that the memory suppression hadn't been able to completely erase. That's an order, Chief. The words stunned everyone, including Sarah herself. She had spoken with the voice of command, with an authority that felt both foreign and completely natural. Rodriguez stared at her for a moment, then slowly reached for his backup sidearm. Ma'am, he said as he handed her the Glock 19, I hope you know what you're doing. The moment Sarah's hands closed around the weapon, something extraordinary happened. Her body moved with fluid precision, checking the magazine, racking the slide, and adjusting her grip with movements so automatic they seemed to bypass her conscious mind entirely. Muscle memory that had been dormant for 6 years suddenly awakened, and she found herself holding the weapon with the easy familiarity of someone who had carried firearms professionally for years. Oh my God, she whispered, staring at her own hands as if they belonged to someone else. It's really true, isn't it? All of this is true. Rodriguez watched her transformation with growing amazement. The confused civilian contractor was disappearing before his eyes, replaced by someone who moved with the confidence and precision of a trained military operator. "Ma'am, how much do you remember?" "Nothing specific," Sarah replied, but her voice was different now, stronger, more decisive. "But my body remembers. My instincts remember. And, right now, those instincts are telling me that we're about to be in serious trouble." As if summoned by her words, the sound of breaking glass echoed from the floor above them. The attackers had found their location, and time was running out. Rodriguez spoke rapidly into his radio. "Control, this is Bravo team. Package Delta is armed and appears to be regaining operational capability. We are about to be engaged by hostile forces and need immediate extraction support." The response crackled back immediately. "Bravo team, be advised that Package Delta is classified as a Level 1 strategic asset. Under no circumstances is she to be captured alive. If extraction becomes impossible." The radio fell silent for a moment, then continued with words that chilled everyone listening. "Contingency Protocol 7 is authorized." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. She didn't remember what Contingency Protocol 7 was, but some deep part of her mind recognized the terminology, and the recognition brought with it a wave of absolute terror. Rodriguez's face had gone pale beneath his camouflage paint. "What is Contingency Protocol 7? Sarah demanded. Rodriguez looked like he was going to be sick. "Ma'am, it's a termination order. If we can't get you out safely, if there's any chance you might be captured and interrogated, then..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Then, you're ordered to kill me rather than let them take me alive," Sarah completed the thought, her voice unnaturally calm. "The question is, what do I know that's so important that the United States military would rather see me dead than in enemy hands?" Before Rodriguez could answer, the ceiling above them erupted in gunfire. Plaster and debris rained down as automatic weapons fire chewed through the floor above. The attackers weren't just searching for them anymore, they had found them. "Move!" Rodriguez shouted, but Sarah was already moving, her body responding to threats and tactical situations with an expertise that amazed her. She found cover behind a steel support beam and immediately began assessing angles of fire and potential escape routes with the keen eye of someone who had done this many times before. That's when she noticed something that made her stomach drop. The attackers weren't wearing the random gear of typical terrorists. Their equipment was military grade, their movements coordinated and professional. These weren't extremists or criminals, they were soldiers, possibly special forces from a foreign military. "Rodriguez," she called out during a brief lull in the gunfire, "these aren't terrorists, are they? This is a state-sponsored operation. Someone sent professional soldiers to capture me." "Yes, ma'am," Rodriguez replied grimly. "And, based on their equipment and tactics, we think they're Russian Spetsnaz or possibly Chinese special forces. Whoever sent them has significant resources and intelligence capabilities." Sarah felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fit together in her mind. A Black Ops cyber warfare specialist who had been memory wiped 6 years ago. Foreign special forces mounting a coordinated assault on a U.S. naval facility specifically to capture her. Information so sensitive that her own government would order her death rather than risk its exposure. "I wasn't just involved in cyber warfare," she said suddenly, the realization hitting her like lightning. "I was involved in something that could threaten the national security of entire nations. Something so big that foreign governments are willing to risk open warfare to get their hands on it." Rodriguez nodded. "Ma'am, I think you're beginning to remember more than you realize. And, right now, that might be the only thing that keeps us all alive." The gunfire suddenly stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow more terrifying than the chaos that had preceded it. Sarah crouched behind the steel beam, her weapon ready, while Rodriguez and his team maintained their defensive positions. In the sudden quiet, she could hear voices speaking in what sounded like Russian, followed by someone speaking accented English. "Commander Morrison," a voice called out from above, the words echoing through the damaged building. "We know you are down there. We know who you really are, and we know what you remember, even if you do not yet remember it yourself." Sarah's blood ran cold. Not only did these attackers know her real identity, but they seemed to know details about her condition that even she was just learning. Rodriguez looked at her with growing concern, recognizing that the situation had just become exponentially more dangerous. "You have something that belongs to us, Commander," the voice continued, closer now. "Something you took from our servers 6 years ago during Operation Blackout. We have come to retrieve it, and we are prepared to level this entire facility if necessary." Operation Blackout. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow, and, suddenly, fragments of memory began to surface, like pieces of a shattered mirror reflecting glimpses of a hidden past. She remembered darkness, computer screens glowing in an underground facility, the taste of fear in her mouth as she downloaded terabytes of data while explosions rocked the building around her. "I remember," she whispered to Rodriguez, her voice filled with dawning horror. Operation Blackout. "We penetrated a Russian cyber warfare facility in Siberia. I downloaded their entire database before the facility was destroyed. But, the data, oh God, Rodriguez, the data contained something that could start a war." Rodriguez stared at her intently. "What kind of data, ma'am?" Sarah's hands were shaking as more memories flooded back. "Nuclear launch codes. Not just Russian codes, but codes they had stolen from China, North Korea, Pakistan, India. They had spent years collecting nuclear authorization protocols from every nuclear power on Earth. If that information were to fall into the wrong hands, it could give someone the ability to trigger a global nuclear conflict," Rodriguez finished, his face pale. "Ma'am, please tell me that data was destroyed or secured." Sarah shook her head slowly, the full magnitude of the situation becoming clear. "I hid it. Before my memory was suppressed, I created a dead man's switch, a system that would automatically transmit the location of the data if I was ever captured or killed. But, I can't remember where I hid it. The memory suppression was specifically designed to make me forget that detail." The implications were staggering. Sarah had essentially turned herself into a living key to information that could end civilization as they knew it. No wonder foreign governments were willing to risk everything to capture her. No wonder her own government had issued termination orders if capture became imminent. "Commander Morrison," the Russian voice called again, much closer now. "We know about your insurance policy. We know about the dead man's switch. That is precisely why we need you alive. Tell us where you hid the data, and we will allow you and your rescuers to live. Refuse, and we will be forced to extract the information through less pleasant means." Rodriguez spoke urgently into his radio. "Control, this is Bravo Team. Package Delta has regained critical memory fragments. The situation is now a potential nuclear security threat. We need immediate extraction and containment protocols." The response was swift and chilling. "Bravo Team, Contingency Protocol 7 is now mandatory. Under no circumstances can Package Delta fall into hostile hands. Extraction Team ETA is 15 minutes, but if capture becomes imminent before then, you know your orders." Sarah understood immediately. Rodriguez and his team had just been ordered to kill her if there was any chance the Russians might capture her alive. The irony wasn't lost on her, the very people trying to save her life had been ordered to end it if their rescue mission failed. "Rodriguez," she said quietly, "I need you to understand something. If those memories are locked away in my mind, there might be a way to access them without being captured. But, I need to get to a computer terminal with access to the base's classified networks." "Ma'am, that's impossible under current circumstances," Rodriguez replied. "The Russians have the building surrounded, and any computer terminal with that level of access would be in the most heavily defended part of the base." Sarah felt a surge of determination that seemed to come from the commander she had once been. "Chief, I'm not asking for the impossible. I'm telling you what we need to do to prevent a potential nuclear catastrophe. Those memories aren't just locked away, they're encrypted and hidden in my subconscious using a system I designed myself. But, I built in a backdoor, a way to access them if I ever needed to." Before Rodriguez could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps on the stairs above indicated that their time for planning was running out. The Russian team was moving methodically through the building, and they would reach the basement level within minutes. That's when Sarah made a decision that would define everything that followed. "Rodriguez, I'm going to surrender myself to them. Ma'am, absolutely not, Rodriguez said immediately. My orders are clear. Your orders are to prevent me from being captured and interrogated, Sarah interrupted, her command voice becoming stronger as more of her military identity reasserted itself. But, what if I'm not captured? What if I go to them voluntarily, on my terms, with a plan? Rodriguez stared at her like she had lost her mind. Ma'am, with respect, that's suicide. No, Chief, it's strategy, Sarah replied, and now she was speaking with the full authority of her rank and experience. These Russians need me alive and cooperative. They can't torture the information out of me because torture would likely destroy the precise mental pathways they need to access. They need me to remember voluntarily, which gives me leverage. She continued, her tactical mind working at full speed. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to surrender to them and convince them that I need to access the base's computer systems to unlock the memories. While I'm doing that, I'll be buying time for you to coordinate a rescue operation and simultaneously attempting to recover my own memories so we can secure the data before they get it. Rodriguez looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Sarah's demeanor had changed fundamentally. This wasn't the confused civilian contractor he had rescued from the shower area. This was a military officer with years of special operations experience, and her authority was undeniable. Ma'am, even if that plan could work, the risk is enormous. If you can't recover your memories, or if they decide you're not being cooperative enough, then you follow your contingency orders, Sarah said simply. But, Rodriguez, I need you to understand something. If we don't try this, if we just wait here for extraction or fight our way out, those nuclear codes remain a threat forever. Every intelligence agency on Earth will be hunting for me, and eventually someone will succeed in capturing me. This might be our only chance to resolve this threat permanently. The footsteps on the stairs were getting closer. Rodriguez made a command decision that went against every instinct he had as a protective operator, but aligned with his understanding of strategic priorities. Ma'am, if you're determined to do this, then we need to give you every possible advantage, he said. Johnson, Ramirez, fall back to overwatch positions. When the commander makes contact with the hostile force, I want you ready to provide cover fire if this goes sideways. Sarah nodded, then, did something that surprised everyone. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small electronic device that looked like a standard military communication device, but with modifications that were clearly custom-made. This is a neural interface device, she explained, her recovered memories providing information that her conscious mind was only just accessing. I designed it during Operation Blackout as a failsafe. If I can get to a computer terminal with the right access levels, this device can help me interface directly with the base's systems and potentially unlock my suppressed memories. Rodriguez stared at the device in amazement. Ma'am, you've been carrying that this entire time? My subconscious knew I would need it, Sarah replied. Even with memory suppression, part of me never stopped being a naval intelligence officer. I've been unconsciously preparing for this day for 6 years. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. Sarah took a deep breath, checked her weapon one final time, then stepped out from behind cover with her hands visible but not surrendering her sidearm. I am Commander Sarah Morrison, United States Navy, she called out in a clear, strong voice. I understand you've been looking for me. I'm prepared to discuss terms for peaceful resolution of this situation. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the corridor, a tall man in tactical gear with the bearing of a professional soldier. When he spoke, his English was accented but precise. Commander Morrison, I am Colonel Viktor Kozlov, Russian Federation Special Forces. You have caused my government considerable trouble over the past 6 years. Colonel Kozlov, Sarah replied with military courtesy, I believe we have a mutual interest in resolving this situation without further bloodshed. But, I need something from you in exchange for my cooperation. Kozlov raised an eyebrow. You are hardly in a position to make demands, Commander. Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Colonel, I think you'll find that I'm in exactly the position to make demands. You see, I remember enough now to know that if anything happens to me, if I'm killed, if I'm tortured, if I simply fail to check in with certain automated systems within a specific timeframe, then the location of your precious data will be transmitted to every intelligence agency in the world simultaneously. The colonel's expression changed subtly, confirming what Sarah had suspected. What do you want, Commander? I want access to a computer terminal with connection to this base's classified networks, Sarah said. I believe I can recover my suppressed memories and locate the data you're looking for. But I need to do it on my terms, with my people present as observers. Colonel Kozlov considered this for a long moment, clearly weighing the risks and benefits. Finally, he nodded slowly. Very well, Commander. But understand that this is a temporary arrangement. You will recover the data location, you will provide it to us, and then we will leave. Any attempt at deception or delay will result in consequences for everyone in this facility. Sarah nodded. Understood, Colonel. But I have one more condition. My team comes with us. They're not combatants in this negotiation, they're observers to ensure that both sides honor our agreement. As Kozlov agreed to her terms, Sarah caught Rodriguez's eye and saw a mixture of admiration and terror in his expression. She was walking a tightrope over an abyss that could lead to nuclear war, but, for the first time since her memories had started returning, she felt like she was truly in control of the situation. The walk through the damaged naval facility felt like a march through a war zone, which, Sarah realized, was exactly what it was. Colonel Kozlov's team moved with professional discipline, surrounding Sarah and the SEAL team in a formation that was protective and threatening in equal measure. The base showed extensive damage from the assault, blown windows, scorched walls, and the acrid smell of explosives hanging in the air. As they approached the main computer facility in Building 12, Sarah's mind was working on multiple levels simultaneously. Her conscious thoughts focused on the immediate challenge of accessing her suppressed memories, while deeper parts of her psyche were already preparing for what she suspected would be the real confrontation to come. Because Sarah had begun to remember something that changed everything about this situation. The computer facility was a hardened bunker designed to withstand direct military assault. Its blast doors had been forced open by shaped charges, evidence of the thorough planning behind this operation. Inside, banks of servers hummed quietly, their status lights casting an eerie glow in the emergency lighting. This terminal, Kozlov said, gesturing to a workstation near the center of the room. It has the access levels you require. Sarah approached the terminal, very aware that everyone in the room, Russian Special Forces, Navy SEALs, and her own conflicted consciousness, was watching her every move. She connected her neural interface device to the computer's USB port and began the delicate process of accessing systems that she had designed but couldn't consciously remember creating. As her fingers moved across the keyboard with muscle memory that bypassed her conscious mind, Sarah began speaking, partly to buy time and partly because she needed to voice the thoughts that were becoming clearer with each passing moment. Colonel, there's something you should know about Operation Blackout, she said without looking up from the screen. Something that wasn't in whatever intelligence files you used to plan this operation. Kozlov stepped closer, his attention focused intently on both Sarah and the computer screen. What do you mean, Commander? The data I extracted wasn't just nuclear launch codes, Sarah continued, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as encrypted files began appearing on the screen. That was what I was sent to retrieve, yes, but while I was in your facility in Siberia, I discovered something else. Something that your government has been very careful to keep hidden. Rodriguez was watching Sarah with growing unease. He could see that something fundamental had changed in her demeanor. She was no longer the cooperative prisoner following Kozlov's directions, but rather someone who was methodically taking control of the entire situation. The Russian cyber warfare facility in Siberia wasn't just collecting nuclear codes, Sarah said as more files appeared on the screen. It was preparing to use them. Not in some hypothetical future conflict, but as part of an immediate plan to trigger a limited nuclear exchange that would destabilize global markets and allow Russia to emerge as the dominant world power. Kozlov's face had gone pale. Commander, you are mistaken. Those files were purely defensive. Colonel, Sarah interrupted, turning to face him directly, I'm a cyber warfare specialist. I know the difference between defensive intelligence gathering and active operational planning. Your facility had detailed strike plans, target assessments, and timetables. You weren't collecting those codes to protect Russia, you were planning to use them to start World War III. The tension in the room ratcheted up dramatically. Kozlov's team moved subtly, adjusting their positions to better cover both the SEALs and Sarah herself. Rodriguez and his men responded in kind, and, suddenly, everyone was one trigger pull away from a firefight that would likely kill them all. That's when Sarah did something that shocked everyone present. She laughed. "Gentlemen, please," she said with amusement that seemed completely inappropriate to the circumstances. "None of you understand what's actually happening here." She turned back to the computer screen, where her neural interface was now displaying files that had been buried in her subconscious for 6 years. "Colonel Kozlov, you came here believing that I stole data from your facility and hid it somewhere. Chief Rodriguez, you came here believing you were rescuing a strategic asset who needed to be protected from capture." Sarah's fingers moved across the keyboard with increasing speed and confidence. "But you're both wrong. I didn't steal the nuclear codes and hide them. I didn't need to hide them, because they were never real." The silence in the room was absolute. Kozlov stared at her with dawning horror, while Rodriguez looked confused. "The entire Operation Blackout was a counterintelligence operation," Sarah explained, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who had just completed an incredibly complex puzzle. "We knew about your Siberian facility, Colonel. We knew about your nuclear strike plans. But, instead of simply destroying the facility, we decided to do something more elegant." Files continued to appear on the screen, showing detailed operational plans that bore U.S. military classification markings. "We fed your facility false nuclear codes. Every single authorization protocol you collected was carefully crafted misinformation designed to ensure that any attempt to use them would fail catastrophically. If Russia had ever tried to implement your strike plan, your own weapons systems would have shut down, leaving you defenseless." Kozlov's face had gone from pale to red with fury. "You're lying. Our technical analysis confirmed." "Your technical analysis confirmed exactly what we wanted it to confirm," Sarah said calmly. "Colonel, I'm a cyber warfare expert. Creating false data that appears authentic under technical analysis is literally what I do for a living." But then, Sarah's expression became serious, and, when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made everyone in the room understand that the real revelation was yet to come. "But here's what neither of you knew, what even I didn't know until my memories started returning. Operation Blackout wasn't just about stopping your nuclear strike plan, Colonel. It was about something much larger." Sarah turned to face both Kozlov and Rodriguez simultaneously. "The false nuclear codes we fed into your system weren't just inactive, they were Trojan horses. Every time your facility transmitted data, every time you communicated with Moscow, every time you accessed your military networks, those false codes were quietly installing backdoors into your entire cyber warfare infrastructure." The implications hit Kozlov like a physical blow. "You compromised our entire system." "Not just your system, Colonel," Sarah said with quiet satisfaction. "Every system those false codes touched. Every Russian military network, every communication protocol, every classified database that your facility accessed during the 6 months before Operation Blackout." Rodriguez was staring at Sarah with something approaching awe. "Ma'am, are you saying that the United States military has backdoor access to the entire Russian cyber warfare network?" "Not just Russian," Sarah replied, pulling up a final file on the computer screen that showed a global map covered with interconnected network diagrams. "You see, once we had access to the Russian systems, we discovered that they had already penetrated Chinese, Iranian, and North Korean networks. By compromising the Russian hub, we inadvertently gained access to the cyber warfare capabilities of every major military power on Earth." The room fell silent as the magnitude of what Sarah had accomplished became clear. She had single-handedly engineered one of the most successful intelligence operations in history, one that had given the United States unprecedented access to global military communications and cyber warfare systems. "This is why my memory had to be suppressed," Sarah continued, saving the files to an encrypted drive. "Not to protect me from the trauma of losing my team, although that happened too. But Because the knowledge of this operation's success was too dangerous for any one person to carry. If foreign governments knew that the US had this level of access to their systems, it would be considered an act of war, Kozlov finished grimly. Every military power would be forced to rebuild their entire cyber infrastructure from scratch. Sarah nodded. Which is exactly what they'll have to do now, Colonel. Because this little operation of yours has forced me to remember everything. And, now that I remember, I can't pretend ignorance anymore. She pressed a final key combination, and alarms began sounding throughout the naval facility. I've just transmitted a complete record of this conversation, along with documentation of your assault on this base, to every intelligence agency in the world simultaneously. Your cover is blown, Colonel. The secret is out. Kozlov raised his weapon, fury overriding his tactical training. Then, you've just signed your own death warrant, Commander. But, Sarah smiled, and there was something in her expression that made even the hardened Russian Special Forces operator hesitate. Colonel, I need to tell you one more thing about Operation Blackout. Something that even I didn't remember until just now. She gestured to Rodriguez and his team, who had been watching this exchange with growing understanding of their role and events. Chief Rodriguez, tell me, when did you receive orders to extract package Delta from this facility? Rodriguez looked confused by the question. Ma'am, we received the alert 6 hours ago when the facility came under attack. 6 hours ago, Sarah repeated thoughtfully. Colonel Kozlov, when did your team begin their assault on this base? Kozlov's expression was growing increasingly uncertain. We commenced operations at 0600 hours this morning. Which means Rodriguez and his team received their extraction orders before your attack even began, Sarah said with satisfaction. Chief, who issued those orders? Rodriguez was beginning to understand the implications, and his voice was uncertain when he answered. The orders came from Naval Special Warfare Command, ma'am. Classified authorization from the highest levels. Sarah turned back to Kozlov with a smile that was all predator. Colonel, I'm afraid you've been set up. This entire operation, your assault on this base, your attempt to capture me, even your knowledge of my location here, was orchestrated by U.S. intelligence. The truth hit everyone in the room simultaneously. Kozlov's team hadn't discovered Sarah's location through superior intelligence gathering. They had been deliberately fed that information as part of a larger operational plan. You see, Colonel, the cyber warfare backdoors I installed 6 years ago have been providing us with intelligence on Russian Special Forces operations. We knew about your mission to capture me before you even left Russia. And, we decided to use that knowledge to our advantage. Sarah gestured around the damaged facility. This attack was never about capturing me, Colonel. It was about providing plausible justification for revealing the existence of our cyber warfare capabilities. Now that you've committed an overt act of war against a U.S. naval facility, we have complete political cover to admit that we've been monitoring your communications and cyber warfare systems. Kozlov's weapon was shaking in his hands as the full scope of his manipulation became clear. The intelligence we received about your location was deliberately leaked to you, Sarah confirmed. We wanted you to come here. We wanted you to attack this facility. And, we wanted this entire confrontation to be recorded and documented so that when we reveal our cyber warfare capabilities to the world, we can point to your aggression as justification. Rodriguez was looking at Sarah with an expression of mixed admiration and horror. Ma'am, how long have you been planning this? 6 years, Chief, Sarah replied. Ever since Operation Blackout succeeded beyond our wildest expectations. We've been waiting for the right moment to reveal our capabilities, and Colonel Kozlov just provided us with the perfect opportunity. Alarms continued to sound throughout the facility, and Sarah could hear helicopters approaching from multiple directions. Colonel, I'm afraid your extraction window has closed. Those helicopters belong to U.S. forces, and you're now officially prisoners of war who attacked a United States naval facility. But, even as victory seemed complete, Sarah felt a nagging unease. Something about the situation still didn't feel right, and her instincts, the same instincts that had kept her alive through years of special operations, were screaming warnings that she couldn't quite identify. That's when she realized what had been bothering her. Kozlov's reaction to her revelations wasn't quite right. He looked angry and defeated, yes, but not surprised enough. A truly masterful intelligence operation should have left him completely stunned, but instead he looked like someone who had lost a game he knew he was playing. "Colonel," she said slowly, "there's something you're not telling me." Kozlov looked up at her, and, for the first time since they had met, he smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Commander Morrison," he said quietly, "did it ever occur to you to wonder why we sent a full Special Forces team to capture one person, when a simple assassination would have been much easier and just as effective at protecting our interests?" Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "We never wanted the nuclear codes, Commander. We knew they were false from the beginning. We developed this entire operation for the same reason you allowed us to attack this facility." Kozlov's smile grew wider. "We wanted to force the revelation of your cyber warfare capabilities." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Our intelligence showed exactly what we wanted it to show," Kozlov interrupted, echoing her own earlier words. "Commander, surely you didn't think that Russia was the only country capable of sophisticated counterintelligence operations?" Rodriguez and his team were looking back and forth between Sarah and Kozlov, trying to understand the new dynamic. Sarah's mind was racing, recalculating every assumption she had made about the situation. "You see, Commander, for the past 6 years, we have been rebuilding our entire cyber warfare infrastructure specifically because we suspected that Operation Blackout had compromised our systems. But we couldn't be certain of the extent of the compromise without forcing you to reveal your capabilities." Kozlov gestured around the room with satisfaction. "Now we know exactly what you can access, exactly how your backdoors function, and exactly what we need to do to rebuild our systems to be completely secure from your intrusions. Thank you for the demonstration." Sarah stared at him in growing horror as she realized that she had been outmaneuvered by an operation even more sophisticated than her own. "But the attack on this base, the risk to your personnel, was an acceptable cost for intelligence this valuable," Kozlov replied. "Commander, you've just given us the keys to completely neutralizing the greatest cyber warfare advantage in U.S. military history. I'd say that's worth the risk." The sound of helicopters was getting louder, and Sarah could see U.S. forces surrounding the building through the damaged windows. But, instead of feeling relieved, she felt like she had just witnessed the collapse of American cyber warfare superiority. "Of course," Kozlov continued conversationally, "there is one small detail you should know. The transmission you sent to intelligence agencies around the world? The one documenting this conversation and revealing your cyber warfare capabilities?" Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. "What about it?" Kozlov's smile was triumphant. "It went exactly where we wanted it to go, Commander. You see, those backdoors you installed in our systems 6 years ago? We've been using them to monitor your communications as well. Every intelligence agency that received your transmission includes several that are working directly with Russian intelligence." The full scope of Sarah's manipulation became clear. Not only had she been tricked into revealing U.S. cyber warfare capabilities, but she had actively transmitted that information to hostile intelligence services around the world. "Congratulations, Commander Morrison," Kozlov said as U.S. forces breached the building. "You've just single-handedly destroyed American cyber warfare supremacy and handed every detail of your operations to your enemies. I'd say Operation Blackout has finally achieved its true objective." As Rodriguez and his team secured Kozlov and his personnel, Sarah sat down heavily at the computer terminal, staring at the screen that had become the instrument of her own defeat. She had recovered her memories, solved the mystery of her identity, and successfully completed what she thought was the mission of a lifetime. But, in doing so, she had just realized that sometimes the greatest victories are indistinguishable from the most devastating defeats. And sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who lets you think you're winning right up until the moment you lose everything.